For more on all the developments coming out of Yemen, I'm joined by Asher Orkaby. He's a research fellow on Middle East Studies at Brandeis University in Massachusetts. I want to thank you so much for joining us. What do you make of the latest developments?
Well, it looks like the Saudis still have no end game. They're bombing Houthi sites, they're bombing other areas in Yemen, but it doesn't seem like they have an end game. In fact, their definition of victory contains three specific and unreasonable outcomes, one which is the reinstatement of Hadi. I think the former president is no longer a legitimate political force in Yemen. He's been out of the country and he really has no political allies. Secondly, there's a hope that the Houthis themselves will withdraw their forces. It's not clear where the forces will withdraw to. The northern tribes that are allied with the Houthis are really local and a domestic force. They live up in the north. It's not sure where they're going to be withdrawing to. And finally, the Saudis are demanding a marginalization or remarginalization of the Houthi tribesmen. This is just returning to the same situation prior to 2004 that inspired and brought about this whole situation. So really, it's a never-ending game as far as the Saudis are playing it.
You heard me ask Jim the question about a political solution. You don't see one either, do you?
Somewhat ironically, it seems like the political solution may actually be with Ali Abdullah Saleh. As much as both Westerners at this point and many Yemenis don't like him, he's still the most political or most powerful political figure in Yemen. 75% of military forces are still allied with Ali Abdullah Saleh. Furthermore, Ali Abdullah Saleh is one of the last in a generation of revolutionaries, or at least politicians who call themselves revolutionaries, dating back to the original 1962 revolution. Saleh claims he was one of the defenders of Sana'a in 1968, and still claims that he has that title of a revolutionary. So in some ways, Saleh may actually be able to save the country and act as some kind of neutral mediator.
Let's talk about the humanitarian side of all of this, because it's such a crisis right now. What can be done there, and how serious is that problem, and does it have a chance to spiral even further out of control, would you say?
Before this conflict started, Yemen was already a case for humanitarian aid. There still are serious water issues. The country is running out of water. It has a serious problem with lack of food, resources. So already beginning this conflict, Yemen was a humanitarian crisis. Now the situation has gotten even worse. There's no clear solution. Most of the airfields have been bombed. The fighting along the border really inhibits the passage of any sort of humanitarian aid across the Saudi border. And it's really, in the short term, is really a dire situation for anyone. I've spoken to a number of colleagues in Sana'a, the capital city, and they've really complained and said that they're fearing for their lives, not just from the bombings, but from the fact that there's a lack of resources in the city.
Asher, what about the U.S. involvement? Can you talk a little bit about that, and can they be doing more?
So the U.S. is really playing a very dangerous game of appeasing the Saudis and the Iranians. It looks like the U.S. policy is trying to appease the Saudi coalition in Yemen, allowing the Saudi coalition to do as they please with the Houthis, and in fact supporting the Saudi airplanes and the Emirate airplanes as they're flying over Yemen. On the other hand, it seems like the U.S. is trying to appease or to work with the Iranians in other issues in Syria and the nuclear issue. So it's a very dangerous game of trying to straddle both sides of what is a Sunni-Shi'i conflict, or what's emerging to be a conflict between the Iranians and the Saudis. And I don't see any way where Yemen actually factors into this foreign policy decision. Yemen really falls into the bottom of importance in terms of American foreign policy in this case.
Asher Orkaby joining us from Brandeis University. Thanks so much for your observations.